Does your startup need an advisory board? Quick answer, I suspect it does, but in this video I'll talk about what exactly is an advisory board and what are some of the reasons why you might want to put one together. Hi, I'm Steve Morris, and I use this Startup SOS channel to provide practical how-to advice for new entrepreneurs who are building a growth company and expect to use investor funding to do that. So in general, why might you want to line up advisors for your startup? And I think the answer is, well, because every entrepreneur needs advice. Nobody knows everything that you could possibly need to know to start and grow a new company. There are a bunch of different categories of help that you might need. One is specialized knowledge. Maybe you need to line up people with a lot of industry knowledge about the industry that you're tackling, or maybe people who are really familiar with different aspects of the technology you're using, who can maybe help you avoid some technology mistakes. Maybe you have people who are very familiar with the regulatory environment you'll have to deal with. That alone can be very complicated. Or maybe you'll need advisors who are very familiar with startup fundraising, especially if that's something you haven't done before yourself. Aside from specialized knowledge, there's also the potential for introductions. Advisors can provide introductions to things like people in the industry who could be potential partners or even customers, introductions to investors who might invest in the company, service providers, and even introductions to potential employees. So introductions are another type of value add that advisors can provide. CEO coaching is another potential value add from an advisor. Being CEO of a startup is a tough job, especially if you haven't done it before. And it can be very helpful to get some advice from somebody who perhaps has been a startup CEO before. Especially for sensitive issues like people issues, an external perspective, somebody to bounce ideas off of can be helpful. And in general, for talking about various strategy issues, CEO coaching can be a great value add that the right advisor can provide. Another type of value add that advisors can provide is just to be a sounding board from an objective outside perspective. It's a little too easy to get involved in groupthink when you're just discussing things inside the company. Sometimes that outside perspective can be a real eye-opener in terms of broadening your perspective. And one other advantage of having some credible advisors is it increases the credibility of the company. If you have some very credible people lined up who've agreed to be advisors to your company, then it says that you've been able to convince some pretty reasonable people that there's a real opportunity here, that they believe in the company enough that they're willing to provide their time. That can help give you credibility with partners, with potential customers, with investors. So credibility is another advantage of building a strong set of advisors. Okay, so those are some of the reasons why you might want to have advisors, but what about the idea of a board of advisors? What is that and why would you go there? Well, a board of advisors is simply an organized group of advisors that you line up and that meets together on a regular schedule as opposed to just meeting with them individually. Now, they are not fiduciaries. They don't have, as advisors, any kind of fiduciary responsibility. That makes them very different from a board of directors, totally different beast that absolutely does have a fiduciary responsibility, that does have some liability and hence requires some liability insurance. But a board of advisors, no authority, just advice, so they're not really creating any liability and hence no need for liability insurance. So very different from a board of directors, but an organized group that gets together specifically to give you advice. So why might you want a board of advisors? Well, I think there's some pretty compelling reasons to put one together. Simply the act of preparing for a board of advisors meeting is valuable. You have to step back and assess the company's situation so you can bring your board of advisors up to speed. And that process of just stepping back and looking at where the company is, that's very valuable all by itself. Once you get the board together and you start having a discussion, you get a diverse set of inputs. This is a very different experience from working one-on-one with advisors. You're getting all together at the same time these different perspectives in the conversation. And on top of that, you're getting synergy. You're getting your advisors bouncing ideas off each other, and you're getting more varied inputs more synergy than you would talking with individual advisors. That can be very valuable. Another value you get out of having a board of advisors is accountability, because you're not just updating them on your status, you're probably going to talk about what it is you'll be doing next. And then in the next board of advisors meeting, well, it's time to update them on, did you do what you said you were going to do? How did that go? That's a very good thing to do for accountability. And in general, it's good practice for the future, because eventually you'll probably have a board of directors with outside directors on it and probably some investors. And having experience putting together a board of advisor meeting is very good practice and very good accountability, in particular, for preparing to present to a board of directors. So who should you invite to be on a board of advisors? Well, it comes back to that question of what is it that you need. We talked about different categories: specialized knowledge, the need for introductions and networking, CEO coaching, acting as a sounding board, providing credibility to your company, and providing the opportunity for accountability and getting feedback. What of all of those do you need? That'll really guide you in determining who you need to invite. What kind of people do you need to get onto your board of advisors? What kinds of background should you be looking for? And in general, what you're looking for are people who you can convince that the company is doing something really exciting, people who really believe there's an opportunity, but at the same time, you want people who will challenge you, people who will ask questions. You don't want a bunch of people who will simply agree with everything you're doing. You want people who will add value in the discussion and in the decision making. So don't look just for yes people, look for people who will ask good questions and challenge you. I do suggest that you formalize your agreement with advisors who are on your board of advisors with a written agreement. It's a simple written agreement, but it just sets the expectations. How many hours are you expecting from them? How often outside of board meetings would you expect to reach out to them? How often will you have board meetings? And what level of participation do you expect from them? And of course, very importantly, what kind of compensation might you be providing? Now, a very typical compensation for board of advisors members would be stock options. And, typically you'll see a range of maybe 0.25% ownership in the company to maybe 0.5%, maybe more if they're really providing a huge amount of value add. But the goal here is not to give them a huge piece of the company. Realistically, advisors are doing this more because they believe in you and because they tend to like to help startups than because they think they'll make a lot of money. So the stock options really are more of a thank you. It should be probably a relatively small amount on your cap table, not a big chunk of stock. And again, 0.25% to 0.5% is certainly very common. And as is usually the case with options, they should vest probably over a period of time, and the length of commitment would be that period of time, and that, of course, should be documented in the letter of agreement. So here are 3 mistakes that I see made fairly often that I suggest you try to avoid. Number 1 is being reactive in building a board of advisors. What I mean by that is, people may approach you and volunteer to be on your board of advisors. And you may really appreciate that and just out of gratitude say, well, of course, it'd be great to have you on the board of advisors. Well, slow down and make sure that actually that person is bringing something to the board that you need. Again, walk through what it is that you need on your board in terms of specialized skills and or introductions and so forth. And again, keep the credibility question in mind too. And be proactive. It's better to figure out what kinds of background you need, what kinds of capabilities and experience, and reach out to the right people, as opposed to simply agreeing that somebody who offers should be on your board of advisors because they offered to. Make sure that that person is a fit, that really is somebody who's a value add for what you need to have on your board. Second mistake to avoid: be careful about selecting somebody just based on the fact that they're very high profile and you think they'll give you a lot of credibility being associated with the company. If they're very, very high profile, it's fair to ask, will they have any time to spend with you? Will they really be able to provide any value? If not, well, maybe you should look for people on your advisory board who might be able to have a little more time to spend with you to really provide value add. Related to that is the third mistake to avoid, which is be careful that you don't list somebody as an advisor without it being clear to them that they have made that commitment to be an advisor. The last thing you want to do is to have, say, an investor or a potential partner check with somebody who you've listed as an advisor on your slide deck, let's say, and have that person say, well, no, I'm not. I mean, I maybe talk with them once, but I'm not really an advisor for the company. It's a great way to lose credibility. So make sure that you have a clear agreement. And again, that's another reason why having a simple letter of agreement is very helpful, to have things in writing. Be sure you have an agreement with somebody to be an advisor before you put that on your communications, your slide deck, your exec summary, whatever. Otherwise, you will lose some credibility. So I hope that convinced you that maybe a board of advisors is a good idea, and you're aware now of some of the mistakes to avoid in putting one together. If this was helpful, please click the like button, share it with other entrepreneurs, leave a comment, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that and click that notification bell, because there are always more videos on the way for new entrepreneurs on this channel. That's a wrap for this video. Thank you very much for watching.